not be there. The general assumption, the conventional assumption is that only Europeans and Asiatics can move. Africans do not migrate. Hence, if you find them outside of their milieu or you find them doing something unusual, either someone moved them, as Jeffries pointed out to me, someone brought them there. Even Wiener, Leo Wiener, the pioneer in this subject, who in the 1920s at Harvard recognized through a study of philology that there were Africans in America before Columbus. What Wiener was trying to show is that the Africans were merely bringing over Arab Islamic ideas and concepts and culture. The Africans had no culture, therefore, until the Arabs came. So even he, although he was showing there were Africans in America before Columbus, he was really saying that they had been porters or paddlers and they had brought over another man's cultural electricity. We have to be very careful to note that even with new discoveries, the script for the African is still not rewritten. Okay, so some Africans came to America before Columbus, so what? What did they do? Thank God they've changed the tune, because now I'm going to show what they did. Because we have evidence of what they did do, because it leaves marks. The first pyramid to appear in America appears right at La Venta, on the very same ceremonial platform where the stone heads first appear. In the first of the sequence, although they find later Tres Zapotes and San Lorenzo, the first of the sequence of the stone heads is at La Venta, and both the conical pyramid as well as the step pyramid appear. They said, well, but the functions are not the same. It's just a temple in America, it's a tomb in Egypt. That is not true. We have found many pyramids could be cited in America which serve both as tomb as well as temple. And in Egypt, many of the great pyramids have temples adjoining. So they have both the tomb and temple combination. And the great ones, the very great ones, the one at Teotihuacan in Mexico and the one at Giza or Gizeh in Egypt, they not only have the same base, the identical base, but they also have the third function, the geodetic marker, or the use of the movable capstone for astronomy, the notches, etc. They said at first that the Teotihuacan pyramid was 1 meter off from the Egyptian pyramid. Now they're allowing that meter because of mistakes in the reconstruction and excavation. Which means it's roughly the same base as the Egyptian pyramid. I'm not saying Africans built the pyramid in America, don't misunderstand me. I am saying ideas and influences were carried forward by that migrating group. There was a reason why there may have been Egyptians and Nubians in the Atlantic. They have no business being in the Atlantic. Egypt is too far away from the Atlantic. But there were reasons at that time, 3 reasons. First of all, there was a war with Asia. The Asiatics, the Assyrian forces in Asia, the mighty power of Western Asia, were moving down the Mediterranean with their iron-powered armies. They had captured the Jews. The blacks saved the Jews in 701 BC, when Taharqa, the great Ethiopian general, before he became king, head of the Egyptian forces, marched into Jerusalem to save the Jews. They were when King Hezekiah of the Jews was trembling before the Asiatics. The Africans entered the battlefield and the Asiatics were defeated. There was a war going on. They had closed the eastern seaports. They found trade by Egyptians right up to Hawaii. They found Egyptian trade goods and scripts as far as Hawaii, as Dr. Fell has shown. They had closed those trade routes. The Egyptians and the Phoenicians, who were accounted for 50% of Egyptian import-export trade, were forced west of the Mediterranean. Script. Barry Fell has shown among the Mi'kmaq a whole series of words in astronomy. As much as 90% in one area, 90% of the astronomy words are identical with Egyptian, the sounds. You go to the script and you look at the Iberian, Punic, the Libyan and Egyptian together. and the Davenport Stella, the hymn to the Aton written in the American. How come when I was at the conference in Arizona, I met a gentleman, I forget his name now, some famous doctor whose name passes me because I got so furious with him, I have forgotten him. He's written a book on the Micmac, challenges me. I said, all right, sir, if you think that this is a fake, I have both before me. I have the Micmac and I have the Egyptian. You are so acquainted with the Micmac. Show me which is which. I don't want to be drawn in that, he said. But the audience, they really embarrassed him. They said, show him, show him, show him which is the fake. Didn't dare do it. Didn't dare do it. There's so many, and it is true that in scripts you can have occasional parallels because there's a limit to human science, but these things were for arbitrary things, very complex markings for arbitrary things. And there was no question of correspondence so remarkable, so plentiful that there was no question, no statistical possibility of accident or fluke or coincidence. You go to Elvia John in the Olmec world, and there is paper made from wood pulp. Nowhere in America were they making paper from wood pulp. Nowhere in the world, except in Egypt at that time, where both the papyrus and the wood pulp was making paper. It was done in China later. It appears in the Olmec world. Isolated incident that appears in the Olmec world. You go and look at their other aspects of their technology. Professor Heiser, who had attacked this thesis all his life, in the last 3 years of his life, he was converted. Do you know what he did? He stopped publishing. He started writing things in favor of the Egyptian thesis, but he didn't publish it. It is now in the Smithsonian as posthumous files. There is where we have found that Heiser showed that the heavy transport techniques the Native Americans were using in the swamps were identical with the Egyptian heavy transport techniques. All of us marvel at the Egyptians, how they moved those incredible stones, taking 50-ton capstones and putting it at the top of their skyscrapers without being a fraction of an inch off. And these guys are suddenly, people, they were marvelous at sculpture, yes, but they're suddenly making these colossal things which they never made before. Making it out of this incredible basalt stone, one block of stone. Some of them close to 40 tons in weight, bringing them down from the quarries to their platforms and building them up with the same skill and ingenuity, technological ingenuity the Egyptians when they hadn't been doing it before. How come? How come when we go to the Middle Americans and study the way they have, not the exact proportions because the individual pyramids change, but they have so many things in their mathematics that are close, as the man who's recently, Peter Tompkins, who's done studies of the Mexican pyramids and the Egyptian pyramids, so the correspondences, the structural correspondences, even in spite of superficial difference. And when we come to ritual, that is the most astonishing thing, and I must give great credit to Jairaj Boy for what he's done in ritual. Jairaj Boy showed several gods of the Egyptian that are identical with the American. There is the god Sokar. He is standing there and he has open arms, outstretched arms, and he has wings on his arms, and he's standing on the back of a snake, and the snake has a head at the head and a head at the tail. You go to Mexico, and there is this god standing there with arms outstretched, wings on his arms, standing on a snake with the head at the head and a head at the tail. How come? The god Aken, he pointed to the double rope swallowing god, identical. The faceless Aken with the swallowing the double rope, there in Mexico in the Olmec world. He shows feathered sunshades, made of 3 concentric circles, 3 colors. These are very detailed things. These are very complex correspondences. They're not flukes. And there you find the same thing duplicated. The double crown. Who wears the double crown in all the world except the Egyptians who united the north and south, for whom there was a political necessity to have a double crown, the red and the white crown. And there among the Olmec, we found 2 examples of it now. Chief dignitaries wearing a double crown. The flail, the crook, you find it on the Olmec dignitaries.